What's up, Driven to Win Nation? Chaz Wolfe. I'm in a different spot here today.
A little bit.
Because I got my good buddy, Jeff Price. I'm actually in your studio.
You are, yes.
Houston, Texas.
Yep.
And I just could not wait to get down here and explore this beautiful space.
Yep.
And I thought, what perfect way to have you on our show than to have you in your own space.
Yes, excited about it. It's taken a while to get here.
Your business is exploding, one, but two, you've created some just incredible things. So first off, just give us the lay of the land of what CAS or CAS is, and then I've got all kinds of directions we're going to go here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So CAS was originally started as a consulting company. Company started in the UK. My original boss brought it to the US with doing some work for Enron. Enron went sideways, obviously, and everybody kind of knows what happened there. They stayed in the US, continued to do work for a lot of other clients in the consulting and specialty staffing space. I came on about 9 years ago. My background was all audio video, so we've kind of shifted that focus over the last few years. We started off doing consulting and design, and then we moved into integration, so incorporating all of those pieces in physical spaces and those kind of things. So
you do such a beautiful job of saying all that, and so for the listener, you create unbelievable spaces with audio, visual.
Yeah, there you go.
Just the components of menu boards and screens and
So from conference rooms to video walls, distributed audio, stadium audio, just kind of run the gambit. If it has audio, video, we kind of touch a little bit of all of that. So
and here you've created some spaces here in Houston for people to be able to come in and record.
Absolutely.
Not as a service that you've been doing, but something that's brand new.
Yeah, so it kind of outgrew from the company had grown so much, we needed to move spaces, and we were looking at marketing strategies and some other things, and so we started thinking about doing some content for ourselves, right? And that's where the kind of the vision for this place was born out of. It came from trying to figure out how to do content for ourselves and do things like this, do some podcasting specifically around what we do as a company, but what our industry does, so that we can kind of pull back the veil on some of that so people kind of have a better understanding. Because it's funny sometimes when you mention, that we're in the audio video space, people kind of look at you with the deer in the headlights, right? It's like, what exactly is that? And then you kind of have to give them the 60-second spiel of it's all these things, right? Yeah. But the intent of this space for us was to do our own content, and then the more we thought about it, we said, let's just create a space that in the meantime, when we're not using it, we can rent it out to other people.
Yeah, and you've done projects from like major audio for like stadiums all the way to like video boards like freaking Hormozy, and everything in between to a simple conference room.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, if it's audio video, we touch it in some way. We can do the large format video walls. We can do the large format distributed audio systems. If it's a conference room, if you need a studio setup like this, we can build this for you. Yeah. It's pretty straightforward.
Talk about the integration of audio visual technology and the workplace, because a lot of what you do is just that simple conference room.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I say simple, but they're beautiful.
Absolutely.
But it's helping businesses move into 2025 and beyond.
Absolutely.
What does that look like for them?
Yeah, so the main focus for video conferencing in business in the beginning was so that people could start to reduce their travel budgets, right? And you could have a face-to-face meeting with somebody and still get the inflection and the emotion or whatever they were experiencing because you had them on video, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That technology over the last 15, 20 years has moved light years beyond where it was, right? So during the pandemic, era, nobody knew what Zoom was really before, or a select few people knew what Zoom was. And then post-pandemic, everybody knows what Zoom is. Everybody knows what video conferencing from your house is. Like the advent of Skype, and the video call and what we do on our phones with FaceTime, those kind of things, right? Yeah. Moving forward, I think it's going to be, how do we get back to a place where you're building those connections with people? So you have to create spaces, one, that people can come to and collaborate collectively together, right? But at the same time, they can still, bring in those other outside resources from the other side of the world, in some cases, right? Because today's workforce is so distributed.
That's right.
That you have to have a way to connect with those people, and that's a large portion of that, right? Is building those spaces that people can come into. What
do you see from your client perspective? And I'm just trying to give some value to the listener of, why investment in a nice conference room or the audiovisual setup of different components in their business. Because I can jump on Zoom right now on my computer,
right? And
we could do that, and it would be okay,
right?
But there's another level, that you guys operate on, and what's the value there?
Yeah, so a big differentiator there is let's talk about enterprise companies, right? If you look at enterprise companies and what enterprise companies are doing, let's say you have 25 people in a meeting, right? If you walk into a conference room and you're connecting with 25 more people on the other side of the world, think about the collective amount of money per hour that you're spending for those people to be in a meeting. And when your technology doesn't work and it doesn't do what you need it to do, every few minutes you're wasting literally hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially, especially if it's executive level or beyond, right? When with like town halls and spaces like that, when a company is doing a town hall, if your technology isn't working, your message isn't being communicated out to all of your people, right? Same thing with like in the spaces of, like GTK, what you guys are doing. If your Zoom accounts aren't working or if your cameras aren't working or if you have audio issues, you're not able to communicate the message that you're trying to get out to people. So it's one of those things with technology of you're trying to reduce the amount of drag on something. So it's, in other words, like you're putting 100%, 110% into your message, right? You want to use technology that's going to reduce, that's not going to reduce the amount of impact and of focus, right? So if you put 100% in, you want to get 98% out, rather, right? And then when you have technology that doesn't do what you need it to, or is complicated, or you don't understand, or you haven't been trained, or those kind of things on, it can really limit your capability to get that across to people and to get your message across, whether it's a message, a sales message to a client, whether it's a video conference meeting with other people in your company, or whether it's branding for your company and digital signage, right? All of those things are things that will affect your bottom line in some way. They may not be immediate, but the effects will be there eventually.
I mean, we've all been on the conference call, or even like, within my franchise system that I own some businesses, it's like, you jump on something and then the guy thinks that he's communicating, but no one can hear him, and you waste time. And then what happens is that then people jump off.
Correct.
And then now you've missed the purpose of the meeting.
Absolutely.
And that all sounds like so trivial. But it's real.
Yes.
If we're just being honest.
Absolutely.
And so what you're suggesting is, obviously there's different scales for the size of business that you've got, or maybe the purpose of what you're trying to do in the communication, but investing in quality eliminates other things down the road that maybe you don't even know are happening.
Absolutely.
Right? He doesn't know that hundreds of franchisees are popping off and then now have a disdain towards either him or the message or even maybe the company.
Absolutely. Perfect real world example for you, especially in your space, with like edible arrangements, right? That kind of deal. If you've got digital menu boards in that space, right? This is just real brass tacks, like how does it affect your business day to day? If you've got menu boards in there when somebody walks in, or in a restaurant, or in a whatever it is, if they've got a digital menu board, that's content that you can build in the background and you can update. Let's say you have 7 locations, 12 locations, 100 locations. That's content you can build in the background and distribute to all of those locations simultaneously, right? Via digital format, right? At that point, your employees aren't having to get on a ladder, change out your menu boards. You're not having to spend money on print, right? You're not having to go through and do all of those things. And at the end of the day, there's a real return on that investment of, one, installing the system, but 2, understanding how to use it, right? And kind of building that requirement, getting to the place where like your integrator understands the requirement that you need, and that they're fulfilling that, right? That's one of the things that we see a lot, is that there's not enough time spent identifying the end requirement and building backwards from there. It's, I'm going to give you a system, I'm going to build the system for you. It's video conference, it does all these things, whatever. And it may be the Rolls Royce when you really just need the Honda. Right? You just need to get from point A to point B. But there are times when people, like in a lobby, right, as like a large format video wall, you want the Rolls Royce, you want the wow factor of like, we want it to be amazing. And that may be just to position your business from a branding standpoint, right? All of those things have things that you don't necessarily see it on the front end, but there is a return on all of that investment. Right?
I'm just thinking of the growing pains of those menu boards, because you're right. I remember when we installed them probably 15 years ago, and all of the growing pains we have. And I can remember some of those early years where updating the software ourselves and having to climb up on a ladder, and they were plugged in wrong, and I was the only person in all of the locations because I installed them when I built them. It was just like a huge mess. And so when you think about what you guys do from a technology perspective, there's obviously, I think Apple has just created a standard of there's another version and another version and another version, which sounds fun until you realize that like, oh, dang, like the thing I bought 3 years ago doesn't work anymore. But I've heard you talk about how that yes, there's going to be a play there, but how you guys kind of mitigate some of that and how you try to pick up front what the actual person needs.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So a big portion of that for us, when we're designing or building a system, we were always coming at it from the standpoint of like exactly what you mentioned, right? So you're in that seat, you had to hang it, you had to put it up, plug it in, make sure it worked, all of those things, right? We come at those designs from the standpoint of if this is going to be a box sale and I'm selling you just the pieces and you're going to go put it together, our goal is to make it as simple and streamlined and easy for you to do that as possible. So we might pre-configure devices, in the office. We may go through and like preload content that you've provided or some of those kind of things so that once you plug it in, it's up and running. Yeah. You don't have to worry about some of those things. But at the same time, like to your point, like the ongoing maintenance and support of those things, that's the other side of that, right? Is providing people with the support, service, training, as updates come out or as things happen, or creating systems that you don't update as often, right? One of the big concerns with people is from a digital security standpoint, right? Making sure that all of your machines are patched appropriately. Well, if you're doing it in an isolated network where there's nothing that, everything is secured and those kind of things, you can stretch out some of those updates longer, right? And have a more stable ecosystem, have a more stable system that you can use on a longer basis. But again, that's like project and unit specific, right? You have to take all of those things into account because you don't want to leave anybody vulnerable,
right,
to cyber issues or things like that. But at the same time, if you're creating isolated networks or isolated systems that, you're only going to go in and update every so often or things like that, there are ways to account for that so that, again, you don't have to deal with those things on your end and deal with those changes because technology is rapidly changing. It's still rapidly changing. Every 2 years, things are different, right?
Yeah.
There's a new thing that comes out or a new piece that comes out. And how do you kind of navigate that? That's one of the things that we assist with on the back end once a project is done.
Yeah. I think it's huge because although it may be a little understated, that time afterwards is just so frustrating. Like even to your point around the often or the regular updates, that there's just one store I used to own, and it was always the problem child.
Yep.
And I just gave up. There's no more. They were just off.
Yeah.
Because every time I did something, by the time I walked out, it didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Or we got an update, and then 2 screens didn't work, and one did, and it was just a mess. And so that ongoing support, to your point, I think is probably an understated, like, major value.
Well, and I don't think people think about, like we talked about the meeting before and like how much time and money you waste if you're sitting there for 15 minutes trying to get something to work, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in your business. Think about like the amount of time that you spent as the owner, right? Trying to figure out this piece of thing or like figure out how to make it work, right? If you've got a technology partner that can help you with those things, right? Yeah. It makes all the difference in the world because even though you're paying for a support or a service contract potentially, at that point, you're still saving yourself the headache of trying to figure it out and wasting an inordinate amount of time on something that's really trivial. And like, it's funny because we talk about this a lot. Like AV is kind of like the bathroom. Nobody really cares about it until it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. When it doesn't work, it's a much bigger issue, right? Because everybody's like, oh, it has to work right now. Like we've got executives coming in, this video wall isn't working. How do we make this work? Right.
That's right.
It's that level of things. And it's that kind of perspective. And the interesting piece about this, and I think the reason that it is this way is because the technology isn't like you could talk about a TV. When there's nothing on the TV, it's really hard to make the TV sexy and make it the really cool thing, right? It's not the TV that's cool. It's the delivery mechanism for what the message is, right, for what the cool thing is. And that's all that technology is for you. Yeah. Whether it's a video conference room, whether it's a video wall, a distributed audio system, right, none of those things are sexy all in and of themselves, and they don't make this return on your investment. What they do, they're basically a force multiplier for your message.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the conduit that your message gets out to people. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people miss when they think about technology in that space is that it's not necessarily that the technology is like, yes, sometimes it's expensive depending on what you're trying to do, right? But at the end of the day, it's the message that you're trying to get in front of people and the impression that you're trying to make on people. Yeah. And without the technology, it becomes really hard to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Hey, Kings and Queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
I want to ask you some business questions because you mentioned earlier, that you guys have transitioned, kind of from one offering to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And somewhere in there, because audiovisual was in your background, you kind of started to pick these little pieces up, and then boom, now you have this organization that's doing just very incredible professional things. From a strategy perspective, was that like going along with it?
Yeah.
Is that you thought about this 5 years ago and you got this plan? How's that actually played on the inside?
I was having a conversation with my wife a few months ago, and I said, I need to write a book eventually called Stumbling into Success Successfully.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, my background was audio engineering, and the running joke for most everybody in the audio video industry is 90% of us, somewhere between 75 and 90% of us all come from some form of a music background.
Right.
We either play an instrument, we were running audio for other things, or we did other things, and we come from that background. And then one day we all had to get real jobs. Yeah. That's like that's the running joke on that. But for me, my background was being a musician, playing music full time, becoming an audio engineer, working in recording studios, and then eventually okay, this is not consistent enough. I need to figure out something to do, because at the time I had just gotten married. So I needed to find something that was more consistent. Yeah. And doing something in the audio video space was the thing that I leaned into. And as a result of that, it has kind of grown over the years. But with CAST specifically, I started with the company 9 years ago in a support capacity, in a role at a client location, managing day-to-day operations for all of the conference rooms and AV stuff in the space. As that kind of grew, it was never really on my radar, the thought of owning the company, the thought of building the things that we've been able to do so far. Yeah. Those were all just things that kind of, as I was doing the thing that was in front of me, trying to deliver as best as possible, all of these things started to kind of organically grow. And so it's I feel like in some ways, I walked into the forest and kind of found this wild garden, and then started to curate it and started to kind of develop it into something different, right? All kind of based on around the just systems, process, all of those kind of things all came together.
It's interesting because it's not an abnormal story for entrepreneurship, but it's unique.
Yeah.
And so what's the message in that? The listeners paying attention right now, maybe they've been in business, for a long time, or maybe they're just getting started. But there's this concept that you've just introduced of kind of walking into the forest, right, finding something that's there, but then making it better in essence, but you really have developed things slowly.
Yeah. So I think part of that is coming from the perspective of, if people are setting goals or haven't set goals or don't even kind of have that as a concept. Early on, when I was playing music, the only thing that I was really thinking about was, what's the next gig? What's the next band? What's the next thing that we're doing? And how do I make this something that I can do for a long time? Yeah. And then as I kind of matured and grew up and figured these things out, part of it was I realized I didn't want to be on the road 300 days a year. I didn't want to do all these other things. So I've got to figure something else out. And so a lot of it was doing what was in front of me, right? And becoming better at what was in front of me. Yeah. And then just continually learning as I went, right? So it's you start off in music and you learn how to play an instrument, right? You move from that into, audio engineering, and you learn all of the aspects of what that looks like. And just continually building your skill set, right? Yeah. Continually stacking those skills until one day you get to a place, and this is, it's a unique journey, but it's, I've talked to other people that have kind of had similar things. They didn't have this thought process of, I'm going to go do this thing. Yeah. Right. It was just this collection of skills that kind of came together and started to build something. And when you looked back at it, you could say, oh, I could take these things and do something totally different, right? Something totally unique or whatever. In the audio video industry, as an example, it's the combination for us of content, technology, and physical space, right? So what is the message? What is the thing that you're trying to get out? What is the technology that you're using to do that? And then what physical space are you in? So we're in the studio right now where we have the technology, right? And the content is the conversation that we're having.
Right.
So when you put all of those things together in the workplace, in any of these other environments, you're building that story in the background, and then you can turn around and see, oh, it's the combination of multiple things, right? I mean, people in the audio video industry are generally called integrators, right? I don't feel like we all do that very well. Sure. We still have our own struggles that we're figuring out process and systems and some of those kind of things.
Yeah.
But the end goal of all of that is to integrate those things together, right? Yeah. So taking the end process or thought process around content, what it is, building the technology to deliver the content as effectively and efficiently as possible, and then also designing that into a physical space. So not only is it functional and gets the message across, but it's also beautiful, right, to a certain extent. So
yeah, I think that's what I appreciate. One of the things I appreciate you most is just that this humble approach of, maybe I didn't have it articulated exactly how it is today. And I think that's pretty real, actually. I think even people who maybe have a vision or a dream board, you still have to have room to let things happen.
Yeah.
And I think your story is just an incredible example of that. And for us to be able to know each other now for almost a couple of years or so, maybe a year and a half or so, and for me to be able to watch you put this piece and then this piece and then this piece, and just like what you said, just kind of just the next thing in front of me. And do it with excellence, and do it with okay, so maybe there's a bigger play here in the world, or there's a bigger picture in the play that I'm doing here, but but let's just focus on what this is right here.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, dude, I've seen you your project sizes have tripled, and you're texting me going, we just closed a XYZ deal, and it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, just a few years ago, you were just managing operations, let alone talking about scaling a company that didn't even do some of these offers.
Yeah.
What's that like?
I think a big part of that is the delivery. I think what a lot of people have great sales pitches. A lot of people can sell you the world, but not everybody can deliver it. Yeah. And I think the big distinction there is following through on, one, identifying the requirement from the client, and then following through and meeting or exceeding that requirement as efficiently and effectively as possible. And I think that's the reason that we've been able to scale as fast as we have and do some of the things that we have, is because we look at it through that lens, right? We always want to make sure, as an example, if we're building a video wall for you, right? We are always going to ask you, what content do you want to put on that video wall, and what do you want it to say? The reason that we ask those questions is because we want to know, does it need to be ultra high resolution content that you're showing a picture of the forest and you want to see every raindrop, right? Or is it just that you're trying to put as much digital signage out in front of people, or a presentation out in front of people as possible? Right. There's a difference in the requirement for those, right? Yeah. So if you can identify that early enough and then deliver that, that's the real, for us, that's been the secret sauce of all of that. It is the delivery. It is exceeding clients' expectations because we went through and really nailed down the requirement. Yeah. Right. That's been, I think, one of the big keys for us.
Yeah, I think that's huge. So, okay, just to kind of wrap things up here, your perspective of, probably not having any intentions of being in business.
Yeah.
To now, scaling an organization, building out a team. You've got multiple locations now. You're servicing clients all over the United States.
Yeah.
And I was just asking you earlier what the percentage was, and I was just mind blown at how many incredible clients that you're serving all across the country. What's the message for the listener? This musician turned incredible entrepreneur. What is their belief here? Is there, you can do it too? What's the stamp?
I was watching, I'm trying to remember what the video was about, but I was watching a video not too long ago about early technological advances on certain things and how certain people have been able to move technology forward and move systems forward and those kind of things. And one of the guy's responses was we were just too dumb to think we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that, what I'm getting at there is, it's not I have a belief in myself. I have a belief in my team. I have a belief in our capabilities, and I know what good looks like. I know because I've lived on the support side, right? I've lived on the client side, and I've been the one requesting quotes from people to do the work and looked at the outcome of what that looked like, right? Yeah. So I have an idea of what meeting expectations looks like from the client side, right? I spent a lot of time on that. Building into that, I think one of the things that it's just continually learning.
Yeah.
Right. It is continually moving that ball forward and never growing stagnant in one thing. And for me, that's always been the thing that I think, done a lot more in is I'll find a new topic, I'll find a new thing, and I'll dive, headfirst into that until I can speak, very intelligently about it, because I've gone through as much of the research and as much of the detail as I can. And that's part of, with technology, with it advancing so often, it's one of the things that you just have to, you've got to continually be learning. And I think that's something for every entrepreneur. Like, you need to be continually learning and graduating your systems and adding skills and, moving those things forward. Because if you can do that, then you can solve that many more problems, not only in your own business, but in other people's business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen that in our mastermind community. I've seen you come in and maybe even already have, I would say, a proficient understanding of a topic.
Yeah.
And yet you ask questions.
Yeah.
And yet you are kind of like, hey, well, what do you think? And like stirring the pot a little bit. Even though like I could tell from some of our initial conversations, or even in that Zoom meeting or in-person meeting that we're doing, I could tell like I know he knows this topic and probably could teach it. But yet you're a student. Yeah. And so I think that what you just gave to the listener, I think, is huge, because it's real. Yeah. One, but I think it's also the actual formula for success. It's like, no matter how successful it might look, how you got there was this one record of what's in front of me, let me master it. Yeah. Let me keep learning. Yeah. There's probably more that I don't understand yet. Yep. Who else do I need to collaborate with? Yep. Who else needs to be part of the team, or who needs to sit at the table? Yeah. What agitation of thought do I need next? Because, man, I don't have it all yet. Yeah. And that's okay.
The other piece of it, I think, is just implementation of, like, learn a topic and then actually go do something with it.
Then go be a doer.
Like, figure it out. And this, I think too many people are afraid they're afraid they're going to make mistakes. And I think, get this way sometimes. Sure. Even with this place, building the studio space, like, there were certain things that we wanted to do that I didn't want to open until they were done, because I wanted it to be, right, in a certain place, right? Yeah. But just the process of moving it forward and, like, the whole learning as you go, like, there are going to be things that, when you start something new, you're going to be bad at it. That's just part of the process. You've got to become comfortable with the fact that it's going to be awkward, it's going to be weird, it's going to be uncomfortable, and move beyond it. Yeah. Because if you can press through that, you'll master it that much faster, because you're setting your ego aside. Because, like, right, when everybody starts to do something, everybody sucks at it. It's just the way that it goes. Like, there's no way around that. And you have to press through those things to get to a place where you can actually master something. Yeah. Right. And that's just part of that process.
Yeah. And the mastering process never ends. Yeah. And that's what I've seen you do time and time again, and you'll continue to do it, because, even as we sit in this just beautiful studio, I know that you've got more plans. Yeah. And it's not that you're not okay with what's happened, because you should be very proud of all this. Yeah. But it's that grateful, not done spirit that we talk about inside Gathering the Kings. It's like there's an ability that you have to be here in the moment, present, and go, wow, like we did this. Yeah. Look at this. Yeah. Comma, but we're not done. Like, exactly. There's more. Yeah. And there's more for us to learn. There's more for us to do. There's more for us to implement, like you're saying.
Absolutely.
Jeff, you've got an incredible business. I wish we had more time. Yeah. But we're about to go jump into a crawfish boil.
Yeah, we're about to go have a good time with some folks.
This is your annual client event.
That is correct.
I came down, and so we had to sneak in a little pod.
Yeah, absolutely.
400 pounds of crawfish being boiled outside right now.
It's pretty crazy. They've got a whole trailer rig out there.
A whole trailer rig and a couple hundred people that are going to be here, and so you are much loved. Yep. I'm sure here by your clients today, but you're much loved from GTK and other members. Cannot speak highly enough about you. But also, just for the listener, if you guys need any audiovisual stuff at all, where do they go? Because you're the man.
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to go right now is casav.com. That's the best location. But you can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find the company on LinkedIn, Facebook. Yeah. We're on all the platforms.
We'll put it on the show notes. But you do work across the country. Absolutely. You've done incredible work with some pretty great organizations. But it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Yeah. To hear your story.
Thank you so much.
Maybe we'll do a part 2.
Yes, I think we should. I think we should do a part 2. Yes.
Yeah, there's more here.
We'll do the distance piece. We'll talk about some more technology.
Sounds good, man.
Awesome.
Appreciate you.
Good stuff.
Thank you for listening to Driven to Win. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.